Welcome to Building Wealthy Habits podcast. Now, this features content and conversations with me, Randy Barkley, Jeremiah Lee, along with Laura Lee. On this podcast, we share financial advice from a team of certified financial planners, including a California licensed attorney, an MBA professional with collective experience of over 40 years.
All right, on this episode, we have Joseph Barkley joining us, and we are talking about executive coaching. He's a fantastic executive coach. And this episode is for anybody who has considered coaching, been curious about coaching, would like to know how coaching is different than maybe therapy or consulting. We touch on all those items, and we end with kind of the transformational moments that each of us have experienced going through coaching. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Never done that. That's a good idea.
Yeah. There's all sorts of newfangled things here. We're constantly evolving. We are constantly a work in progress. But
you just find what works for you. You know,
Right.
it's not like there's a right way to do it.
Right.
You start to develop habits that work. But anyways, I'll shut up because I know we got to get started.
No.
We'll talk more about this too, but I think the idea of experiment is such a useful one, you know, with coaching. That came from coaching. But the idea of like experimenting, we use it all the time. Like, oh, this is an experiment. This isn't like a commitment. This isn't something we're doing. This is experiment. Everyone knows, you know, so I'm just going to do this thing.
Right.
And this full grace thing. It's
I can't wait. We're going to unpack some of these like words, you know, like these trigger words in a good way, in the best of ways. But okay, for our listeners, let's go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to change the flavor a little bit, and we're talking about the impact of executive coaching. So we're talking about its applications and its impact on the culture and leadership within any company, but we're going to talk about the experience that we've had at Tricord Advisors. But to have this conversation, I knew that it would be essential to bring on an expert, and this is an executive coach that means so much to us. This is Joseph Barkley from Novus Global, and let me give a little bit of your bio. Joseph King Barkley is an executive coach, author, and speaker. He's based in Los Angeles, California. He's a former television and film songwriter who became a nonprofit and for-profit entrepreneur. He now dedicates his professional energy to helping accomplished individuals and teams who would like to discover what they're capable of and generate clarity and courage to experience it. I love that bio. So good. And might I add, this is my personal aside, he's a fantastic older brother and one of my favorite people on this planet. Joseph, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, sis and brother-in-law.
We are
I
such a
love
family.
hanging out with you any chance I get. That's right.
We're such a family operation around here. So
Well, family
it's
parties
great.
aren't usually recorded, but we'll take it for now, right? I mean, it's
If they are, we need to burn the evidence.
Exactly. So, Joseph, for some of you that know Joseph's background, I know I shared a little bit of his bio, but he is an executive coach. And recently, let's say over the last, year and a half, maybe 2 years, Tricord Advisors has tapped into Joseph as a resource as an executive coach, but also a team that he works with at Novus Global. And so, Joseph, I know you'll share a little bit about that on our episode. But just to kick us off, this is actually a 2-part series. And we're going to talk today about kind of some of the internal impact that executive coaching has, and we're going to give some personal testimony to that. So I find that executive coaching is such a rich topic. It's multifaceted. We started the episode by talking about some of those buzzwords in the coaching world. So to start our conversation for our listeners who are just curious about executive coaching, can you share with us just a little bit about your field and who benefits the most from executive coaching?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's important for me to clarify what we mean in Novus Global when we say executive coaching, because coaching is the second fastest growing service industry in the world. The first one would be information technology or technology, LLM, AI. But coaching is the second fastest. And there's many people who are coaches in the world, but they may mean something slightly different, not better or worse, just different than what the person next to them means when they say they are a life coach or an executive coach. So what we mean when we say we are executive coaches is that we're primarily focused on three things for individuals and or teams. And the first and most important thing is the vision, getting a crystal clear, white hot vision, a preferred picture of the future that justifies the pain of transformation. That's the vision. And that becomes the functional boss of everything that we're doing. We're answering to the vision. We're reporting to the vision. We're measuring our current circumstances relative to that vision. So that's so important. The next thing that we'll focus on is mindset. So how are you thinking about the way you are and your circumstances and this vision and the distance between where you are and where you want to be? It is, and we'll get into this probably more in this conversation, but it's skipped over very often. People want to focus on what do we got to do? What are the strategies? What books do we got to read? But it becomes far more productive and even more importantly, transformative if we can be looking at your mindset before we talk about your skill set. And then if you have a great vision that's very clear, resourceful for you, and if you're thinking about it in a way that opens up possibilities and options, that's a great place from which to develop strategy, which is the third thing that we focus on. Hey, what's the plan? What are the commitments that we'll have to move us closer to that vision? Maybe, and this is one of those words that came up as we were bantering in the beginning, what are some experiments that we want to run to see if we get results that we weren't getting before? So vision, mindset, strategy. That's what an executive coach partners with you to unlock so that you can create a future that you want.
I love that.
I love the phrase you used at the end of unlock of, when we work with clients on the financial side, everyone's got a vision of their future. They just don't know that they actually have it, right? It's you kind of have to unlock it. I imagine in executive coaching, most everyone has a vision of their future, their professional future, their family future, who they want to become. And part of that is helping them unlock and like that phrase you used, the crystal clear, white hot, to say, this is so specific. Let's really lean into it. So we all know where we're going rather than just I want to be better in the future, or I want to be kinder in the future, like whatever it may be. So
I like the order that you mentioned those in: vision, mindset, and strategy. And you particularly mentioned mindset over skill set or before skill set. And for someone, I think probably a lot of our listeners that are driven by productivity, how many things can I check off my list in the day? Do, which is so much of our American culture and other cultures as well. But I see how often for me, those get flipped in a different order. It doesn't mean that I don't have all three in my life, but I like how coaching lays a foundation where you start with vision, because that feels like a different roadmap for me. I might arrive at a vision prior, but it's having had worked or developed a strategy or, et cetera. Whereas starting with the vision and the mindset, I think the order is really important.
Yeah, I found that it's crucial to create a picture, to create a future that we are all going to create some future. We're either going to do it by default or by choice. And I agree that everybody has a vision, but as we age, it's not uncommon for us to settle for a vision that is vague, which is not bad. Vague is great place to start. It is incremental. Hey, I'd love to be just a little bit ahead of where I am now. I would like my marriage to be just a little bit better than it is right now. Awesome. That's beautiful. What is better? How much better? How would you know it's better? And there's a lot of cognitive resistance. Our brains are telling us like, hey, don't get too specific, because then you've defined what failure looks like. If I tell myself I just want to be a little bit better of a husband this year, I can sit there on New Year's Eve and say, I think I'm a little bit better. I could tell myself a story that I've tried really hard this year and we've had some really great moments. I'm a little bit better. But when we create a very clear picture of where we want to be and how many date nights does that look like, and what are things I'm hearing my kids say and my wife say because of how I'm treating them and behaving and sacrificing, and how are they seeing my character being played out. Wow, okay, then that helps inform what habits do I want to try out? What new boundaries do I want to draw? What people do I cut out of my life? How do I budget if we want to have a family experience this year? And that's part of how our family will get better. That's an experiment we want to run. So again, the vision becomes so resourceful, not as a prophecy, like this is the way it's going to be no matter what, but it really helps drive my intentions and my habits and my choices today. So it can be immediately transformative by getting clear about where we want to go.
Kind of the personal side of this, with our company, I'd come into Tricord Advisors and was working here for a bit, and I was developing a new role of leadership. And part of talking to Joseph and kind of bringing in a coach is, my previous career, I was with a law firm, and I had junior associates who were working for me, but it wasn't that I was shaping the culture of the firm. They already had a culture. I was just fitting into that and, leading people by, giving them tasks, giving them assignments.
Yeah.
And coming into Tricord, there's a whole opportunity to lead culture and to, shape the way that we want people to communicate, the way that I want to lead, where we're headed. It was a great opportunity. I think, to your comment, Joseph, there's times where people don't see the break point that I needed to make a change. They have to come to some moment. And for me, that was, changing careers, changing jobs, coming into this company and taking on a different role of leadership and said, hey, I want to be a certain type of leader. I have a vision for this, or I want to get clear on my vision for this, of where we're heading as a company and where I'm heading as a leader here. And it was exceedingly resourceful to bring you in personally, initially. And then we actually brought in your team and worked with our whole team and got, not just myself or with Laura, but having our whole staff have a common vernacular, common words they could use, common, experiments we're running. And that has been hugely resourceful. So that, I guess that first question, who benefits? I think, it sounds like anybody, but I think primarily someone who is thirsty for a higher vision, thirsty for something more, as well as anyone who's in a inflection point and saying, hey, here's a moment where I can remake the way I am. We remake the way I show up and walk into something new.
That's very well said. If any of your listeners or viewers are wondering if an executive coach is right for them or right for one of their colleagues or a family member, a friend, the answer in one way is all of us would benefit from these practices, and having someone in our corner who helps us see ourselves more clearly than ever and find out what we're capable of. I don't believe I can find myself by myself. I don't think that's how we're created. I don't think we're created to figure it all out on our own. I also don't want to do surgery on myself. It's possible to do it, but it's really messy and ineffective. So I want to have somebody who can expertly and almost emotionally, with an emotional detachment, say, hey, I suggest that we need to make an incision here. I suggest we need to have this medicine. And I know you wouldn't prescribe yourself that stuff because it's painful, but because of where I think you want to go based on what you shared, this is what I advise. And so that's a wonderful partnership that anybody would benefit from. And it doesn't always mean it's got to be an investment with a coach, which can happen at all sorts of financial investment levels, from tens of dollars to, of course, multiples of thousands of dollars, depending on what you're up to. But I would say there's one caveat to, one little asterisk to anybody would benefit from this. Something that I want to ground in for myself, because I have a coach, I've had a coach for years, is I am only going to benefit from this to the degree that I am coachable. And what that means is, at least a few things that means, is how much do I have an appetite for a transformative vision? Because let's face it, that can be hard and scary. But do I have an appetite to at least articulate it? Yep, this is where I want to go, and it's gonna cost a lot to get there. That's number one. Number two is, how much am I hungry and proactively seeking input, feedback? Do I really want to know there's broccoli in my teeth? And all of us would say, at least initially, I don't know about all of us, but in my experience, most people will say, oh yeah, for sure, I definitely want the feedback. Most companies will say, yeah, I absolutely want honest feedback. I think it's a gift. It's awesome. And then when you actually engage in it to create a feedback culture so that coaching really takes hold, you find that they're, holy cow, like I didn't realize my feelings would get hurt like that. I didn't know that you were going to tell me that I'm not amazing and perfect all the time. That's its own grief. As somebody who's a high achieving, I can be people pleasing sometimes, to really make the most of coaching. I want to be present with and aware of how uncomfortable, how alarming, how confrontation's maybe too strong of a word, but how how like no makeup on, no filters on, honest the
like
experience
authentic,
is.
Revealing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And if I know that this person who's in my corner is for me and loves me and thinks I'm capable of a lot, then I'm a little bit more open to it. But I don't want to paint the picture that everybody's going to benefit from it because it's such an easy ride. There's a choice. There's a courageous choice to say, hey, I want to really make the most of this resource, this person.
And I want to add on just a little tangent, because we're going to talk next about the various formats of coaching, but I'm in the near future embarking on having an individual coach. And when you and I spoke about it, I share in some of those similar characteristics of people pleasing or high achieving. And so for those who appreciate the Enneagram, kind of an Enneagram 3 sort of mindset. But
sure.
My experience with coaching in the past has been that I come to it and naturally want to give the best answer or the right answer. And so that conversation that you're having about authenticity and welcoming in someone who maybe or maybe doesn't know you very well into a very intimate space where they're saying, hey, yeah, let's make an incision there, right? Like there's a premise platform of vulnerability that you have to be willing to share. And so this is one of the things I appreciated about your process is kind of interviewing coaches. I had a fantastic conversation with one recently where there was opportunity to, in fact, interview them and say, and I was really open about it. I said, look, my experience of coaching has been that, like, you're a teacher and I'm a student and I want to come and bring the right answer. So I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. And that's not actually what this process is for. And being able to even kind of lay the groundwork of like what that relationship needs to be so that it can be the most beneficial and can maximize. So I'm excited and I'm a little bit nervous about sort of what will transpire. So before my voice gives out here, we wanted to launch into just talking about that very thing, which is that there's different formats to coaching. We've experienced them here at Tricord, both individual coaching, leadership, like coaching just among our leadership team, as well as kind of group format. So I love it. Joseph, you can talk about kind of the dynamic aspects of coaching and some of the just various aspects that you've seen the benefits of each.
Yeah, I'll answer two questions I think might be embedded in there, and let me know if this doesn't hit the mark for what you're bringing up, Laura. One is, I think it's helpful to distinguish between different modes of counsel in your life. So to paint a very broad brush, there would be what I would call therapy or counseling, and there would be consulting or teaching. Those are kind of in the same umbrella. And then there's coaching. And therapy or counseling is likely going to help you address your relationship with your past, your relationship with your emotions, and your relationship with unwanted behaviors. Let's say addiction, for instance. Beautiful for that. So resourceful. Consulting and teaching is, I have answers. You get to learn these. I have a system. I'll help you implement them. That's consulting. And so some people who would say they're coaches are actually more like consultants, and that's great. I hire consultants all the time. I need them to help me implement a tried and true strategy or a software system or a marketing plan, whatever. So coaching, just like it sounds, is trying to awaken your capacity, your performance ability. So as your coach, if we were in the gym and I lifted the weight for you, then you're not getting stronger. So a coach is paying attention to, what is this person's goal? Are they going to be a bodybuilder or a marathon runner? Because that's very different training plans. Oh, we're running a marathon? Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to invite you to get onto a treadmill. I'm going to invite you to a certain kind of stretching, but you've got to do it. I'm not going to do it for you, because the goal is not that you are a really good student while you're at the gym. The goal is when I'm not here, you can run a marathon. I'm not going to run. I can't run for you, or else I'm an ineffective coach. So that's why so much of what we do is based on inquiry, because it's awakening your ability to take agency, ownership over your thoughts, over your creative thinking, over how you are relating to your circumstances, so that you can make great decisions when your coach is not around. And so that's why we've really downplay any. There's a coach will give you feedback. A coach will give you, sometimes there's even what we might call like suggestions, or, hey, what about this? Have you thought about this? For sure, that happens. It's kind of like spotting you in a bench press. Like, I'll tap the bar a little bit. But the best client-coach relationships is when the client, over a period of time, feels stronger, and they might not even know that they could credit that to the coaching relationship. They have just become a new person. They've become a different leader, or their company has become like, wow, it feels different working here. That's when we know it's working well. I hope that addresses the question.
Yeah. I love it. It's so funny because when I wrote that question, I was actually thinking about a different context. I was thinking very practically, like we've had one-on-one coaching experience and we've had team coaching environment, right. But I appreciate how you answered it. You kind of took it and talked about sort of the context of feedback or advice. I think you called it the modes of counseling, and how all of us have modes of counseling that we receive on a regular basis. And it's sort of, how do we categorize those? How do we process them? And what are our expectations? How do we expect them to benefit us? So if you're looking to a consultant for coaching, right. your expectations are off. So I like how you delineated kind of the difference between those buckets, and how, frankly, they all have purpose.
Absolutely.
In our lives. So I like that. Well, we've already kind of touched on this a little bit in and out, but I just want to kind of give kind of an open format to talk about, coaching as a deep dive into an individual's core motivations. It asks that individual or the group to rally around a vision. This is where it's really thrilling when you're talking about developing a culture within a company, and it invites them to think farther outside the box than they probably feel comfortable or than they've ever imagined before. So along that path, I know I've experienced aha moments in my group coaching experience thus far. So I just thought we could each share from our personal experience about an aha moment that we've experienced on our coaching journey that was just sort of this major mind shift. We've talked about a few of those trigger words. Those may or may not come up here, but Jeremiah, you haven't spoken in a little bit. Do you want to kick us off? Do you want to talk about an aha moment?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do one that there's a few that come to mind, but one that I think was really resourceful to me was, coming out of in a law firm, when things would get full and busy, you want to get your job done, right? And think like a big corporation, like you're in your role, you got to get your pieces done so that the group can then move forward. And I found as I was moving into a leadership role that when things were getting really busy, I was getting to my desk and doing my thing so I can be the best worker. And as a worker, maybe that's great, right? But as a leader, going into your office and doing your work is not at all what's appropriate in the midst of, or what I didn't feel was appropriate in the midst of, getting a lot to be done. And that was a really good aha moment just for me personally, of the difference between being a good worker and good at my job and being a good leader to lead the entire organization to accomplish more than I ever could in that moment. And to show up for my team, not as I want to get a gold star, but rather I'm the one handing out the gold stars and cheering everyone on. And I think that was a really good breakdown. That's not just a structure. I think that some of the other ones I wrote down are structures that we use in the words. But to me personally, that was a great kind of mind shift of, my job as a leader, as any business leader, is not just to get your job done. It's to set a environment in which everyone around you can thrive. Kind of that servant leader of lifting everybody up. So that was I think a good breakthrough for me, just a mind shift of what my role is not just to do well at my job, it's to do well for the entire organization.
Yeah, that's good.
Joseph, you want to go next? We only have a couple minutes left. What was a mind shift for you?
Oh, yeah. I'll say when I first got started in coaching years ago, when I first hired a coach, it was my relationship with with the doing. And it's different than what Jeremiah just shared. Mine was that in the achieving, that was a source of energy for me. And yet what I ended up doing was working 100 hours a week and only moving 1 inch forward at a time. And it landed me in the hospital, adrenal shutdown. I didn't see my kids to the degree I wanted to. My marriage was not where I wanted it to be. And so by actually creating a bigger vision, at first I thought it was like, that's going to be 10 times more doing. No. What if we create a 10x vision, but you do it in half the time? Who would you need to become? What would you try? What big swings would you take rather than a bunch of just tiny little ones if that's the kind of game we were playing? And it actually ended up, I had more of a, what I found was then my activity, I was making exponential moves, not incremental moves at that point. And it helped to discern much better what I can clearly say no to, because the yes was so big. That was a massive mind shift. Mind shift switch for me.
Let's keep it G-rated around here, all right, Joseph? Okay, I'm going to save mine because this is a 2-part series, so I'm going to kick off the next episode with my aha moment, and we're going to shift from kind of the internal impact of executive coaching to how financial planning and executive coaching actually go together. So just real quick, in like 10 seconds or less, Joseph, for those of our listeners who are interested or curious about executive coaching, what resources would you give them? What should they check out?
Yeah, just go to our website, Novus, Novus.global. And you can set up a discovery call with someone to see if there's a coach that's right for you at a rate that works for you. That's a great place to go for a whole host of resources.
Perfect. We'll include that in the show notes too. Joseph, thank you so much for being a part of this episode. We loved having you here.
I love it.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about, or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
This show was produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.